the Summer Kings take their first loss of Summer League in what was one of the ugliest Summer League games I have ever watched. And that is saying something because it's Summer League. I didn't think the Kings offense could get worse than it was against the Hawks last game. Somehow they won that game still, but I didn't think it could get worse than that. But I was very much wrong. The Kings had 25 points at halftime, only scored over 20 points in one quarter, and that was the fourth quarter where they scored 27. They scored 9 points in the second quarter. And I mean, I was just laughing a lot of the game, to be honest, at how bad the Kings offense was. Isaiah Thomas, as a commentator, didn't make the viewing experience any more enjoyable. He is actually horrible, and I just want to thank whoever unplugged the production crew's mics for that like 5 minute stretch there. That was the best stretch of the game. But getting into actually evaluating players from this game, it's kind of hard to evaluate guys on offense when everyone sucks. And for especially the first half, there wasn't even one guy that was stepping up. And then in the second half, it was Colby Jones that stepped up, and Keon Ellis was uh, the only other guy that was doing anything. It was unfortunate that Neemias Queta went down with an injury, something with his right foot, I believe it was. I think that's what they said. And he didn't come back for the second half. And so that was really unfortunate because he was one of the players that I most wanted to watch. And so I guess I'll start with him because we can evaluate his short first half. And I actually thought he started out playing pretty well, especially on the defensive end. I thought he was affecting so many shots, and he looked super energetic out there. Like, he was everywhere on the court, I thought. And like I've been saying with him, rebound numbers don't tell the whole story, except this time I think it was like the opposite, because before I've been saying, yeah, he's gotten a lot of rebounds, but I don't think his rebounding has been particularly good. I thought he was actually better in this game, and then I look and he has 2 rebounds. But I think that's just because of how energetic he was and causing things to happen and creating guys to or forcing guys to miss shots around the rim even when he wasn't blocking shots. He had 2 blocks in 10 minutes, but it felt like more because of how many shots he was affecting. So that was the good part of his game. And then the bad part of his game was on the other end, where offensively you could see that the Kings definitely made it a priority to get him the ball and get him involved, especially in the places that he had success at the end of last game. Like in the mid post area, they tried to get it to him inside and in better position than they had previously. And the few times where he did get the ball in good positions, like a couple times he made a couple good passes. And then the few times where he looked to score, it did not go well at all. He turned it over twice, just didn't look great in terms of attacking the basket. He's just not developed offensively. I think you could see the flashes in his passing potential. But the thing for him is I think he needs to be able to catch the ball inside after someone else makes a move and then, just either right away those little floaters or little hook shots or like one dribble into a hook shot, like that's where he can thrive. And at times we have seen his ability to hit those shots, and then other times, maybe the hooks are coming up short. But that's definitely where he can thrive. But him creating out of the post himself is definitely not his game. But like I said, it's hard to evaluate guys offensively when nobody else is really doing anything offensively. Like when you have Jordan Ford have his first rough game of Summer League as the point guard, if no one else is going to create, then it's hard to evaluate everyone, kind of. I mean, Neemias Queta got one shot, and he made the shot, and I can't remember exactly what that shot was, but that just kind of shows the lack of creation and penetration because he was not getting set up in the inside to be able to get the ball where he can thrive. But I hope his injury is not serious because I really want to see more from him. But the big standout from this game was Colby Jones. He had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals, 2 assists, only 1 turnover. He went 3 for 7 from deep, was super efficient. This was by far his best game. And it's not that he necessarily showed anything that we hadn't seen in the previous 3 games, but he just kind of put it all together, I thought. You can see the Josh Hart comparisons definitely in his game, the way he goes after rebounds. Even though he's only 6'6", he has a nose for the ball and is always going after those rebounds. And then defensively, he's a super smart player. And I thought he stayed in front of his man pretty well. And he was working well defensively within that like 3/4 court press zone defense that the Kings implemented for a lot of the game with his just, I think, IQ on defense as well as his active hands worked well in that, along with like Keon Ellis and Kessler Edwards, who all fit that mold as well. But the number one thing I noticed from him was his floater. His and just his touch around the basket in general. That's the thing that I think is his best trait, is his finishing ability. That floater is automatic. It like never touches rim. And then he made some pretty tough layups, had an and one in there, missed the free throw, but it's about him finishing that through contact. And so I really do think he has a place in the NBA as just a guy who does a little bit of everything, especially if he can become a good cutter off of Sabonis. Sabonis is going to get him the ball, and with his finishing ability, I think that he could really thrive in that role. Keon Ellis had a solid game. Again, was good defensively with his active hands. I mean, is there a time where he doesn't lead this team in steals? 3 steals again for him. And he kind of had to take it upon himself to do a little more of the playmaking with both Jordan Ford struggling and us not really having a point guard off the bench. And I thought he was okay in that role. Definitely not great, but he didn't turn the ball over much. And I really liked that he was looking to create things offensively, which is not necessarily his role with the NBA team. It won't be his role, right? His role is a 3 and D guy, but if he can show that he has some ability to create things off the dribble, I think he can make himself extra valuable, and I think Keon and Colby Jones are kind of similar in that I don't think either of them will ever be like primary ball handlers, point guards. But I think if they can both be competent in handling the ball and not be a negative when it comes to playmaking and, turning the ball over a lot, things like that, if they can add that little extra part to their game, then it'll be hard to keep them off the court, I think. But like I said before, Jordan Ford had his worst game of the summer league. His shot really wasn't falling. He was still, I think, doing an okay job at facilitating. I thought he made some pretty impressive passes and was always looking to get downhill. But I think with his shot not falling from deep, it kind of, I don't know if it made him lose confidence or just made him defer more, or if it was just that the offense wasn't really respecting him as a shooter and that made him struggle. But then on the other end, I thought up to this point he had done a pretty good job defensively. And then in this game, I thought he got exploited a bit on that end because he is a smaller guy. And that's especially in the NBA. It's a tough thing to handle being a smaller guy in the NBA versus the G League. Like smaller guys definitely have a much easier time in the G League. But in the NBA, guys are not going to let that fly. They see a small guy who looks kind of weak. They're going to exploit that matchup every single time. They're going to put you in the action every single time. And so the one worry. I don't really worry about him offensively, even though he did struggle in this game. These guys are always, you can't be perfect every game offensively, but then what can he do defensively in the games where his offense is not great? And that might be the reason where the Kings look elsewhere in terms of a third string point guard. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see what the Kings do with their two open roster spots plus the two-way contract, because we don't know what's happening with Queta. And I feel like everything kind of revolves around that, whether he gets the extra two-way, because there's no way Jordan Ford is getting a full contract, I wouldn't think. But I feel like he could be in the running for the two-way. But if Queta's on that two-way, then I think that totally takes Ford out of the running. And so everything kind of revolves around that. So I don't, it's hard to judge what the organization is thinking, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And then the last starter to talk about is Kessler Edwards, who continues to just be kind of erratic offensively. I think this was possibly his worst defensive game too, even though the team as a whole was pretty solid defensively. And somehow, despite being horrible offensively, we're still in the game. And the only reason we couldn't really make that comeback in the fourth quarter was Xavier Moon just hitting tough shots and creating things. But yeah, I didn't think Kessler's defense was to his standards, at least. I think his length still bothered players, but yeah, I didn't think it was the best defensive game for Kessler Edwards. And then on offense, I mean, that's just he is trying to do way too much. I feel like he thinks I'm the guy that's already on the guaranteed contract with an NBA contract next season. So I have to do something with the ball every time. And it's like that's not his role. You can see him trying to create off the dribble, which is just, I don't think that's ever going to be his game. And he was turning it over so much. He got called for a couple travels, could have been called for a few more. It felt like he traveled every time he caught the ball. And I think that's the good indicator of him trying to do too much, because it's like he catches the ball and he's just immediately trying to make something happen. And so he just gets ahead of himself. And at least he hit a couple threes. And that is what he needs to do. And he definitely hasn't been afraid to shoot it in Summer League. Not that he's afraid to shoot it in the NBA either. But the 3-point shooting is, I keep saying it, with him, it kind of is as simple as, and with a lot of these guys, if you can hit your threes, then you can play. And if you can't, then you can't play. And maybe another guy like that is Jalen Slawson, who I think is a good defender. At least he's shown that he can be a rim protector as well as a guy that can guard perimeter players, it seems like. But then offensively, he's kind of all over the place. Like, I think he's made some good passes, but every time he gets the ball and goes to the rim, it's a hold your breath kind of moment, because he is pretty out of control, or not even necessarily out of control, but I never have any faith that he's going to get by his guy and actually get a good shot. And so I'm just hoping that someone overhelps and he can make that pass, because he does seem like he's a solid passer. So that's I think the one offensive trait that he's living off of right now. But he needs to be able to hit threes, and he hasn't really been doing that in summer league. And but that's a small sample size, so he's definitely a guy that's, I don't think, gonna spend really any time with the main team, and he's gonna spend most of his time in the G League next season. And then just some other guys to talk about. Comanche and Dom were the replacements for Queta, and I thought they both did a good job of bringing energy and getting on the boards a lot. Comanche especially, I really liked him on the boards. And then Dom, the Dominator. I need him in the NBA, because that would be the best nickname in the NBA. the Dominator. I mean, that's a great nickname. And he is definitely not afraid to let it fly from deep. And I mean, hit two in this game. I liked his activity on the boards, like I said, and I think he's a solid rim protector, but it may be his mobility that limits him in terms of getting to the NBA. And then Comanche is probably just his lack of everything else other than energy that's going to limit him from getting to the NBA. And then the one thing I'm disappointed about in terms of the roster is how few minutes Alex O'Connell is getting. Just because I I love watching him shoot. I've talked about that before. His shot is beautiful and his quick release. But then he's also a really solid cutter, and that's where he got his one bucket in this game. And he seems like very much a Kings system type of guy in terms of just being able to catch and shoot super quickly and then cut. Like that's the perfect kind of guy for a Kings system. Not that he'll, make it to the NBA team, but I think it's clear why he's within, the organization. That was definitely an ugly game, but I had a lot of fun watching Colby Jones and his floaters and his finishing ability. I think in these 4 games, it's clear why the Kings gave him that 4-year second round exception rookie contract. And so, with his expanded offensive role within this summer league, he's had 2 games now without Keegan Murray, and he obviously thrived in this second one. So I'm excited to see if he can keep that going, and then hopefully Neemias Queta can come back. I don't know if there's any word on him yet, but anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I think the Kings play again on a back to back, so I will see you guys to recap that game. Peace.